Right now is former diplomat, Ambassador Mohan Kumar, who's the Dean at O.P. Jindal Global University. Thank you very much for joining us, Ambassador Kumar. Give us a sense of the economic agenda on the table when world leaders meet in Delhi for the G20. 3 to 4 top areas where discussions will be the most important to watch out for.
Thank you very much for having me. I think one of the top items will be the basic resuscitation of the WTO. The World Trade Organization is moribund and it is dormant. None of the three functions of the WTO, namely the negotiating function, the trade monitoring function, and the dispute settlement function, is working very well. So one of the things that the leaders will be focusing in the leaders' final declaration is the reform of the World Trade Organization. So that is the first. The second trade issue is basically one of moving food grains. And you heard about the food grain deal that was worked out between Ukraine, Russia, and the others. Food security is a major problem. And unless you have free movement of food grains between the producers of the food grains, which in this case happens to be Russia and Ukraine, and the destination, which is the lower income countries, whether they are in South Asia, whether they are in Africa. And unless that movement happens, you're going to have a problem. Last but not least, I think there will be a recognition of the fact that the Sustainable Development Goal #1, which is abolition of poverty by 2030, is not going to happen. The World Sustainable Development Report is out next week at the United Nations in New York, and it is recognized that the world is behind the 2030 SDG agenda. And the abolition of poverty is important because unless you have trade, unless you have investment, you're not going to be able to lift people out of poverty. So in my view, responding to your question, these are the three main areas that the leaders will focus in the G20 declaration.
Okay, I would like to specifically ask you about the absence of Xi Jinping. Now, it's been known for some time that President Putin will not be coming. He will be represented by Sergei Lavrov. But today, officially, the Chinese government has confirmed that it will be Chinese Premier Li Shang who will be representing China and not Xi Jinping. The optics are important in an event of this kind. What kind of message is China sending out? Does this make negotiations difficult?
I think there are three possible reasons for Xi Jinping's absence from the Delhi summit. One is completely geopolitical. I think there is now a preference by China for international structures which are not Western. G20 is clearly a Western structure, a Western construct. So Xi Jinping feels more comfortable in a BRICS context. He does not feel very comfortable in a G20 context where fingers might be pointed at China for supporting Russia. The Indian press will probably ask him about the border dispute with India, and the Americans will probably want to pin him down on a meeting between Xi Jinping and Joe Biden. So the first reason is geopolitical. The second reason, I believe, would also be because of the tense relationship between China and India. I personally think this is a lesser reason than the main geopolitical reason. In terms of the message for G20, life goes on, because in the past G20 meetings, countries have been represented by presidents, prime ministers, and even foreign ministers for that matter. So I don't think it makes too much of a difference at the end of the day. The prime minister from China will come. I'm assuming he will come with full plenipotentiary powers to negotiate the final declaration. So as far as I'm concerned, as long as he has got plenipotentiary powers, it doesn't matter. We will be able to negotiate with China and try and get a good leader's declaration.
Okay, I would also like to ask you about Ukraine. We had seen President Zelensky of Ukraine addressing the G20 last year in Bali. We've also seen him represented at G7 several times earlier. Do you think here the Prime Minister will give a strong message to end this war? Considering India is the president of G20 and this is the culmination, there will be expectations from the Prime Minister to come out strongly against the war. Do you think there will be some message, some effort on the part of India to bring the war to an end?
I have absolutely no doubt that India will convey that message in very strong terms to its G20 partners. I mean, the famous words of Prime Minister Modi that today's era is not of war is something that has figured in the Bali leaders' declaration. It also figured in the trade minister's declaration outcome document in Jaipur just about 10 days ago. So I have absolutely no doubt that that India's conviction that this battle in Ukraine cannot be won militarily and that there has got to be a diplomatic solution to this problem is a message that will be conveyed very strongly. The fact that trade ministers, including China's minister and Russia's minister, accepted this language, that today's era is not one of war, makes me feel confident that those words will also find reflection in the leaders' declaration.
Right. And very briefly, sir, in just about 30 seconds, do you feel there will be any consensus on a common framework for debt restructuring? China so far has not been very supportive. Do you think we will find some consensus? In about 30 seconds, if you can sum up for us.
Yes, very, very briefly. I sincerely hope there will be a consensus on this issue because India owes it to the global south. China owes it to the global south. And if China wants to claim that it is also a leader of the global south, it should agree to debt restructuring. This is a critical issue, but we will see.
All right. Ambassador Kumar, thank you very much for putting into perspective for our viewers what really lies ahead this week on the G20 Leaders Summit. We are going to take a short break.